do you see a role for technology to improve services, how they are delivered for migrants and refugees?
I think it's really good to use these technologies because they provide solutions. Good social services, no matter from which side you look at it, they help for peaceful coexistence. And peaceful coexistence, if it's spread throughout the region, then there are no problems.
Welcome to a new episode of Resilience Talks. I'm Cristian Ghita from the Euro-Atlantic Resilience Center, one of the proud partners in the EVOSST project. EVOSST, which stands for Evaluation and Valorization of Social Services for a Sustainable Transition, is a Horizon Europe initiative that brings together 14 partners across Europe to transform how we understand and how we deliver social services. Through cutting-edge research, innovative digital tools, and evidence-based frameworks, we are trying to elevate societal well-being to ensure environmental sustainability and to foster inclusive economic growth. And today, I'm thrilled to welcome Professor Elena Mandalenakis, an expert in migration studies, security, and human resilience. Professor Mandalenakis serves as an adjunct professor at the George C. Marshall European Center for Security Studies, where she leads seminars on regional and applied security studies. She is also the co-chair of the Partnership for Peace Consortium study group on regional security in the South Caucasus, and she is the co-editor of the handbook Building Resilience Against Human Security, Threats and Risks. Now, her work bridges critical contemporary challenges, from migration and integration to cybersecurity and regional stability. All of these resonate deeply with EVOSST's mission to create resilient, inclusive social service systems. Professor Mandalenakis, or if I may, Elena, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Christian, for having me. It is a pleasure.
Professor Mandalenakis, your research spans migration, integration, human security. It's a very broad field of study. Now, from your perspective, how do migration flows challenge the social service systems in European countries? I'm thinking here particularly in terms of access, equity, sustainability even.
Well, first of all, I think we need to identify what we mean by migration. There's a lot of talk about it. So just to give the broad picture here is that we are talking about people who are moving from their place of where they were born or where they live to another place. This is a general framework, a general definition. We talk about internally displaced people. This is when these people are actually moving within their borders, within their own state. And we're talking about international migrants. These are the people who are actually crossing borders and they move to another country. What is the reason, obviously, for moving? It's because their living conditions are not good. They don't have employment. Maybe the environment is not very good for work or even living. Maybe there are natural disasters, wars, conflicts, and even persecution. So in such cases, moving to another place, it's not really a choice. This means that the people actually carry with them some kind of trauma and hardship, which makes it interesting from the social services point of view. Because when these people arrive to another place, they need care immediately and protection. So what is interesting with respect to the pressure that migration may provide on social services is that the people who are really keen, or they're obliged, let's say, to leave their place, usually they tend to choose pathways that are very that are irregular. They're not regularized, through a process like a visa process. So if someone wants to study, abroad, it's a little bit of a choice, right? They go and then they follow a certain procedure. But if they really need urgently to leave, they just choose routes that are not legal, and they will face a lot of threat and risk for their lives. So in this way, we're talking about migration crisis, when a lot of people are moving through these routes, and you see a mass inflow of people from another country coming into your country. So here, when we talk about social services, we talk about programs that are designed to provide support to the vulnerable people and to marginalized individuals. And at this point, we're talking about migrants who are a vulnerable group. We have women, children, men. This is the majority of the people, obviously, coming, men and young men. But the most vulnerable are the women and children. So now what happens is that once the inflow of people is so large, the social services are pressured quite a bit. So we may have problems of access, as you already mentioned. For example, there are not enough interpreters at the reception centers. There are not cultural mediators to help communication better. Maybe the documents are not in their mother tongue and they do not understand what they're reading and what they have to do. So this is a problem of access, especially at the first stages. With respect to equity, okay, this is a little bit, I would say there's a debate about this, because it's not necessarily that services are provided to the whole society, right? But it doesn't mean that if services are provided to migrants, then the rest of the society is not having any access to the services. So here,
although this is one of the mantras of certain political forces.
Absolutely. And this is actually, that's why it's important to mention it, because there is a perception that the migrants, the existence of the migrants is creating problems. And this is not true, actually, because what happens is that the system, the migration actually exposes the inequalities in the system. And then the people think, oh, it's not us, it's because the migrants came. And then we have politicization, we have racism, xenophobia, hatred, and migrants become scapegoats. So this is a very negative thing, that they connect equity to the existence of migrants. So this is a problem of the system, not necessarily of the migrants. And now with respect to sustainability, so under this pressure, are social services capable to sustain their function? And what about other problems in the society? Demographic issue. We all know that in Europe, we have a severe demographic problem that only migration can solve it in a short term. So by refusing having migrants coming in, because this is what has been happening in most of Europe, then we close the door to one of the solutions to the demographic issue. So what is important here is that when we combine demography and migration, we have to talk about integrated migrants. And we have to talk about social cohesion, because without this, then we have other problems rising up. So what is important is that after migration crisis, we can look back at the system of the social services, we can reevaluate them, see how we can improve the access, equity, and ensure sustainability, actually, for both the migrants and the host society.
Indeed. And this whole question of integration, assimilation is something that is really looming in the background of most of the discussions. You wrote important contributions on the topic of human security and resilience. Can you explain what human security means in today's context? Is this a theoretical framework or a notion that can help us better address the needs of vulnerable people like migrants, displaced persons?
Okay, so this is a big concept, right? And we're used to hear a lot about national security. But what we mean
Yeah.
about national security is the protection of state sovereignty, of territories, of borders, and the people who live within them, right? So the state has monopoly of national security. Now, human security comes in, where it aims to take this monopoly away from the state and focus the issue of security on the individual. So we are talking about, so the first definition was in 1994 at the UNDP, but since then it has evolved. It's not very easy to define human security. It really depends on the situations and the context we're talking about. But what the important aspects of it is fear from want, meaning that all the basic needs are ensured of the people, and freedom of fear, which means that you're protected from any kind of violence. So these are important issues that have been incorporated into the concept of human security, as well as it has components like 7 other components, which we often hear about, which is the economic security of the people, food and water security, health security, environmental security, community security, and political security, and personal. So as you see, it encompasses every aspect of life.
So all
So,
this directly connected to the basic human rights,
right.
because, for example, there is a basic right to work, but not a basic right to welfare. This is one of the fault lines in understanding what it means to have human rights and being free from want.
The human security takes it a step further from human rights, because human rights are guaranteeing our basic needs to survive. So we often talk about Maslow's pyramid also, like these,
Yeah.
there is a pyramid with the basic needs, right? And then we go up to other needs. But human security goes deeper in this, and it goes beyond just the basics and the foundation, because it really helps to develop also. It's not just to survive, it's to move on, to grow. So the problem with the concept is its operationability, actually, many times. And people have problems with it. But this depends on the context, right? So we have to be very specific. So what is important to note about human security is that, first of all, it's a universal. It applies to everybody. It is multi-stakeholder, which is also important. So it's not just the state providing something. You have the individuals, really the individuals, because it's a bottom-up approach. The individuals are responsible for their own protection. Local communities, they have to get organized in local communities to serve their own needs. And then you go up the ladder to the state, which is not obsolete, actually. Many people think that human security means I don't need the state. This is not true, because the state is there to facilitate things.
Of course.
But the initiative should come from the ground. So that's why we call it's a people-centered concept. Human security, it's really for the people, from the people. What is interesting and relates to our topic, it's that it gives extra attention to marginalized groups and individuals. So migrants, as we're talking about, just to be on our topic. It focuses on their vulnerabilities. It advocates actually for them, and it helps address the needs of the people. And this is where social services come in, because the idea is human security emphasizes the need to prevent, protect, and empower migrants. So in order for this to work well, though, we're talking about resilience, and this we have to mention here, because we hear it, we talk about resilience of systems, we talk about resilience of individuals, but we don't realize what exactly this means. This is very connected to human security, and it's really the ability to anticipate, mitigate, recover, and more effectively bounce forward from the human security shocks. And this is the important aspect of it. So this comes in conjunction with human security. So you cannot say, oh, I am resilient, because it's not just a trait. It's not just an outcome. It's really a process. And this is where social services come in to help this process. So it's really always in relation or in conjunction to adversity. If you don't have adversity, there is no discussion about resilience. And this is when we talk about migration crisis, for example.
Almost a stoic approach. Yeah. Without the adversity, you don't have the virtue.
And just to add, that's why we talk about individual resilience and systemic resilience. So when we talk about social services, we have to make sure that they are resilient, that they are flexible, that they have a flexible funding to deal with changes that imbalance the existing system, for example. They have, feedback mechanisms, which is actually what EVOSST is trying to do here.
Yep.
So we need to put emphasis on different steps in order to make sure that we have protection and resilience. So, yeah.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for bringing up the connection to the EVOSST project, because it emphasizes the integration of technologies such as AI, VR, to enhance social services. Now, based on your experience working with various communities and marginalized groups, do you see a role for technology to improve services, how they are delivered for migrants and refugees? And on the other hand, are there potential risks of technology that we should be mindful of?
Actually, this is a very interesting topic. As we see technology in every aspect of our lives now, I think it's really good to use these technologies because they provide solutions. So as EVOSST actually is encouraging the use of these technologies, the aim is to increase efficiency, accessibility, and personalization of services. So, and it also aims to evaluate their short-term and long-term effectiveness and user satisfaction. So, why are we talking about such technology? This technology steps in to help alleviate some of the burden that the administrators at the reception centers, for example, have, or social services face. So they provide information that would be helpful to migrants. So the opportunities actually coming from the use of these technologies is that they allow migrants to navigate complex informational environments. They're accessible through mobile phones, and every migrant actually has a mobile phone even before they start traveling and changing countries. So they ensure accessibility from everywhere, home, work, rural area to and by everyone. So because usually they're multilingual, and this is very important. So this way they ensure equal access to information and tools that are needed. Of course, this has an effect on social inclusivity, right? Because people learn languages through apps. They learn geography of the country through games. So it really helps make these people comfortable being in another country. They also facilitate interaction of people with social services that they cannot go to them for. geographical reasons or cultural
Even
reasons.
staffing problems. I mean, you cannot expect an administration to have hundreds of social workers to meet all the needs of the migrants.
And that they all speak all the languages, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Another thing. So what is also attractive is this kind of technology is attractive to young people, right? And as I mentioned before, the majority of migrants are men of young age. So this is very important. They're also free. So they're not, they don't need to spend money to use them. VR, because this is one of the technologies used, is actually, or augmented reality or virtual reality, as we say, is usually helping with familiarization of spaces and processes. So if a migrant wants to see how a library looks like, can go online and have through virtual reality see the space. Or if he has an interview, he can actually train and be coached, for example, through this technology on how to behave or how to dress during an interview and see the layout and how he would be sitting with the interviewer so he can feel more at ease, he or she, okay? Just to make sure. So, but another thing that I think it's quite important to mention is that with these technologies, you can also train officers at the reception end. So policemen, you can border guards, officers that deal firsthand with the migrants. So this way they can understand them better. So these are the positive outcomes of using such technology.
So, for example, the ease of translation that AI introduces is absolutely fantastic. Or having augmented reality, looking at a form, a printed form, and just being able to translate instantly into your own language, where you should write your name, where you should write your age, and so on. It's a fantastic aid. Again, because an administration cannot publish its forms in 20 languages.
Right. And actually, they can even help migrants create a CV and have a profile, which these are a little bit more advanced, right? So you can go from the frequently asked questions to opening hours information to CV making, for example, and training for an interview, which is, I find it's fascinating. There may be, let's say, not are, but there may be some problems or risks. One is a little bit more pragmatic, like sometimes the VR, like the headsets are expensive. So then they would be costly for migrants to use. So it's not something that they can do from home. They would have to do it from an office, an NGO, or the social services office. Another problem is that some migrants may not be tech savvy, as we usually say. And this would apply mainly for older people or even people who come from countries that do not have access to technology and they're not so familiar with it. Although there are steps to follow, and it depends on the personality of the person.
And if these people have had the courage and the initiative to take their lives into their own hands and do something as drastic as switching places, going to a place that you don't know the language or we don't have relatives or friends, it is a measure of ambition that is going to fuel your ability to learn, to adapt to a new environment.
And willingness, right?
And
this is exactly what it is, because we may have in cases, actually, the migrants may reject the use of this technology, but that's not because they don't know how to use it. It's maybe because they don't feel so comfortable and they want some human contact and interaction. So this has to be taken into account. And another thing that we see all over, actually, in our life is the algorithms. It's very important that the algorithms used in these programs to be trained for the specific programs. Because if they're taken from different how to say, apps or different function, they may carry with them bias, which may turn against the migrant and target them. So with respect to, I don't know, economic, if they have economic viability, or because they're migrants, they may be checked more and more, and people would not, I don't know, give them housing, the housing they want, for example. So it's really, it entails some risks, but they're not, it's not that we cannot deal with them, right?
Yeah.
What I think, though, is that we should use the technology, but because it's not perfect, it's not panacea. So we must have a balance between technology and human presence, because complicated cases of migrants cannot be addressed or solved through apps, for example. You need the humans to take charge of it. So this is just my my thought about technology.
So technology should not become a tool for ghettoization of migrants. This is your argument.
Absolutely, yeah.
I see. Yeah. One of the EVOSST core objectives is to develop a measure that goes beyond traditional economic indicators. Based on your work on migration and integration, are there non-economic factors that we have to consider when evaluating the success of social services for migrant communities?
Look, sometimes we use quantitative data to talk about.
It's very easy to understand. We're used to that. We're used to counting beans.
Exactly. Yes, and they're used as indicators for migrant integration, but they don't give the full picture. So we need to also use non-quantitative data, like life satisfaction, well-being of migrants, their standing compared to the rest of the population. And this is actually where EVOSST comes in, because this is, again, the aim of EVOSST, to actually look at these data and go beyond the quantitative data in order to understand how well these services work. And it's not just about reception of migrants, but it's their integration into the society. So what we can look at, for example, from the perspective of education is, do children from early on have language programs in their schools? Are they, because it's not just language learning in a vacuum, it's in the classroom. And language is very important for social inclusion also, and social cohesion.
It's a life skill.
Right?
Yeah, it's
skill,
foundational for everything else.
Exactly. So how do these kids later on compare with other kids of non-migrant parents? Are they on the same standing? It's not about grades. It's more about being there, participating. Are the adults, for example, the education of adults, is it recognized by the state? Can they enter the labor market with the skills they have? When we look at mental health, for example, do migrants receive mental support? Do we have reproductive consultation for female migrants? Do they have, what is their life expectancy? Do they have chronic diseases? Because there is a link between migration and low life expectancy due to the trauma that they have endured, these people. Do they exercise their rights and obligations? Do they actually understand them? This is actually at the reception a stage that is something that is very important. Do they feel safe in their neighborhood? Do they experience racism, harassment? Do they have friends outside their own community? And this goes back to your comment about ghettos, right? Or are they staying into their own community because either they
in
can't
your experience,
or they don't want?
migrants who gain the right of residence, Do they usually vote in the local elections? How do they participate in the political and civic life of their communities?
It depends on the countries and the rules. One thing for sure is that they need citizenship to vote at the national elections. But more
Yeah, that's why I
open,
didn't mean the national election, just the
yes,
local elections.
they do participate. And actually, this is another indicator. If they're participating in councils and they are co-deciding about societal issues, because this shows inclusion in the society and that they're really active members of the society. So yeah, I mean, all countries are trying to encourage participation, or most of the European countries try to encourage participation. But it's not only one-sided. It has to be from the side of the migrant too. And I have seen in councils like municipal council, when I was attending, I saw interpreters who were migrants, and they were the liaison to the municipality or to the council responsible for the migrants in the city, where they were the bridge for communication between the local government and the migrants. So this is very positive participation of these people. So yeah, I mean, it's really important to look at these indicators to really understand what is happening. It's not about employment rates only and such economic indicators.
Indeed. You've also worked extensively on issues of regional stability, conflict resolution. How do you see the relationship between regional security challenges and the resilience of social service systems? If we have stronger social services, does that contribute to regional stability?
Okay, regional stability is a very complex issue, and we cannot talk about regional stability in vacuum, because there are a lot of factors playing into it. But what is important to know is that social or strong social services or resilient social services can actually contribute to regional stability. So if I have strong services in my country, then, and I feel happy being there and secure and safe, it's unlikely that I will try to move elsewhere. Of course, this is normally in cases where you don't have conflict or war, right? Otherwise, things are becoming a little bit more difficult.
Or you may move, for example, as a student, you go to a different university and then you come back. There's a more cyclical movement of people rather than
Sure, this is
definitive.
when you actually bring in your knowledge from another country to apply it into your own country. This is one of the benefits, right, of bringing knowledge back to your country to develop certain sectors. But another thing that is important is, I don't know how to say, it's like fair access. So like, it's also a perception issue. So if the migrants feel, or even the whole population, but even if the migrants feel that they are catered to, let's say, by certain services, and they are feeling safe, and they can develop and grow because of this help, they're most likely to be integrated in the society. So once you have integration and social cohesion and absence of hatred, of grievances, then you will not have conflict also within the society, which conflict will not lead to a war eventually, maybe a civil war, for example, and that can spill over in the whole region. So this could be a perception issue that plays into regional stability. At the same time, when the local population realizes that, the migrants are not they're not responsible for let's say, inequalities, or they are not receiving less attention due to migrants, then again, you have social cohesion. This is one aspect of it. And there are no grievances within the society. So what I want to say is that good social services, no matter from which side you look at it, they help for peaceful coexistence. And peaceful coexistence, if it's spread throughout the region, then there are no problems. Because we know in regions like the South Caucasus or the Middle East, the huge amounts of refugees and migrants who are hosted at the borders of, let's say, Lebanon, in Turkey. This is not easy also for the local community. So we have to see both sides. What is also interesting in the case of Bosnia, for example, services, or let's say mixed groups, are created by public services to integrate people who were coming from opposite sides, who were fighting in the past. And this is helping for the reconciliation of the healing process, the reconciliation of the society. So you can have very strong impact of social services, because social services are not just public services. They can be also private services from NGOs, from civil society. So we need to take this seriously, because they have an effect in the long term on regional stability. So I think this is the
in your
Bosnian case is a good.
experience, can migrants work as goodwill ambassadors between countries? Does the perception of a country improve if you get well-adjusted and well-standing members of the community coming from that country as migrants to your community? Is that going to improve your perception of the other country, or is it more likely the other way around?
Yeah, I think it does, because if you, that's why interpersonal relations matter, right? If you're in good terms with, let's say, people from Pakistani descent, or a different ethnic group, and you have no problems at work, you have friends from this ethnic community, of course, this creates a better image in your mind about how this community is like. So it's not threatening, for example, to you. So you don't have this distinction between us and them. So it is very important. That's why participation is important also. So when you see that migrants are participating in a constructive way and not just to distract or to care only for themselves, but they care about the whole society, this creates a good image of this group at the host society. So they're definitely goodwill ambassadors in this way. And this, many times we notice that when they're neighboring states who have, let's say, I have a state who has some of its ethnic, how do I describe this correctly? We have neighbor states with minorities from the state next door. Many times, if there is a grievance or a dispute between the countries, the migrant group within the host society may disagree and actually be disassociated with the country next door. So it's very important. The perceptions are important in this case for the sense of security and peace in the region. So yeah, this is a very good point that you make.
You've led seminars at the George C. Marshall Center, covering over 40 security-related topics with participants from more than 20 countries. What are some of the most pressing global security challenges of this current time? And how do you think they might impact the design and delivery of social services in European countries?
So there are a lot of challenges, to be honest.
Course. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about them.
Exactly. But I think the one that stands out is actually the decline of what we call the rules-based international order. So that international norms that have been used to build societies and services have been actually weakened. So now what we notice is state competition, prioritization of state security at the expense of human security. We see geopolitical changes, regional instability, conflicts leading to increased insecurity and increased population movements. This we will see for sure in the future, much more than now. More funding is allocated to the defense industry, and it may be, this is not necessarily the case, but and the advancement of technology for military purposes, and it may actually reduce the funding for social services. This is what happens very often. We have tougher border controls trying to keep the migrants out. The humanitarian work has been discredited, actually, and NGOs are, many times treated as terrorist
almost
organizations.
criminalized.
Yes, they're criminalized. And actually, this is not correct either, because civil society and NGOs are the first responders in a crisis. So they're the ones who are stepping in even before the public
We know that
services.
very well from the Ukrainian refugee crisis, when the local communities and NGOs were much quicker to respond to the needs of the refugees than the authorities. So there are excellent case studies about that, at least from my country,
there are a lot
Romania.
of case studies. Yes, absolutely. Romania, in Greece, we saw the same thing. Another thing, actually, which is quite interesting, is that you can have, because of this power competition, this can be transferred to the domestic level, to the local level. So you can have actually grievances within the population because of this international politics. So, for example, as you mentioned, Ukraine, when the war began, kids of, let's say, in Greece, I had this experience. I saw this. Kids of Russian descent from Russian immigrants in Greece were accused of being responsible for the war. Their children. They're not responsible for the war. So you see how this transcends, this problem from the international level can move to the local level and create societal problems. Another big problem...
And the other way around, there were Ukrainian children who were being bullied in schools for being Ukrainian, and by people who in their families were listening to Russian propaganda.
Yes, absolutely. And this touches upon other, actually, challenges. What you say, it's the challenge of disinformation, actually. This I was thinking as a third challenge, but I will mention it here because it connects to your topic, to what you brought in. Disinformation now is it's very challenging because there is this dissemination of false information. First of all, depicting immigrants and refugees as disruptors, as responsible for unemployment, for economic hardships. They become the scapegoats. Then again, as I mentioned before, we have increase of tolerance, we have xenophobia, polarization of the society, and radicalization. But disinformation is also interesting in the case of the migrants themselves. When they decide to move to a country, they look for information about this country. So many times they base their decision on wrong information, false data that has been disseminated with respect to the routes, the safety of the routes they're using, to the benefits they would receive in transit, or not transit so much, but receive it countries.
At the destination.
And actually, yes, the destination. And many times they are exploited by smuggling networks because of that. and they become victims of human trafficking, although this they didn't expect. So this is very important to battle in order, because accurate information is, I mean, it's the key in today's age of communication. What I find important, and often it's been pushed on the side, is climate change also. Because climate change creates fragile environments, and it increases the risk for human security. And this will lead to more population movements in all directions. So because of climate change, we can have food and water insecurity, scarcity of resources, and then conflict also. Due to the need to access scarce resources. So this has to be seriously taken into account, because it will lead to more and more migration, international migration flows, except the internally displaced people that will be created. So these three are very important. Of course, okay, we can talk about the security of data due to cyber attacks. So this affects directly the social services. We can talk about the exposing of migrant data to non-responsible actors. So what social services now have to do to connect to this, to these challenges, is that they must be resilient and they must anticipate these challenges and many more, but these are very important ones, the ones that I mentioned. So they have to prepare to deal with shocks that may come from such challenges. They must be able to respond effectively so that they can cater to people and mitigate the consequences of these shocks for the migrants, as this is our topic, utilizing all available tools like technology. And they must create systems through continuous updating them, excuse me, testing them. They must train first responders better. So EVOSST again comes into this, because it helps with its findings. It evaluates the work of certain systems like social services, and it aims to design more resilient, or propose how to design more resilient systems, and the political framework actually that will support these systems. So EVOSST is playing a bridge, let's say, between different stakeholders, and in order to achieve resilient systems, in this case of national services. So, yeah.
Moving on to the last question of this discussion. Looking forward, what do you see as the greatest opportunities for innovation in social services and in building resilient communities? What advice would you give to the policymakers who are working on this topic?
I think what like looking at the whole picture, the challenges and the needs on the ground, we have to allow for collaboration. The challenges are transnational. Therefore, they cannot be dealt with unilaterally. So they cannot be dealt with by a specific social service. They cannot be dealt with from a specific region only. They have to be dealt in a larger scale, by countries, by regions. So migration, which is considered many times a challenge, it's also a transnational challenge. Environmental degradation is a transnational challenge. So we must have, what my proposal would be, to have multiple stakeholders representing different levels of governance, including small communities who are marginalized or are migrant communities, because marginalized is not necessarily migrant communities, right?
Of course.
Because this way you can address the needs of the people more. They need to be able to create frameworks that sustain collaboration. There has to be political will. This is the big thing. Organization, enough funding for these programs, and
This is a
for
tough
the
nut
support.
to crack.
It is, but it's not a solution to defend borders only if the people inside are not safe inside the country. So, in order to be able to have stronger national security, you have to have very strong human security within your state, because the people will also facilitate and enhance national security at the bottom line. So I think it's very important to have stakeholders from the individuals, local communities, local governments, national governments, international organizations. They're not obsolete. They're very helpful when it comes to dealing with crisis. And it seems to me that we will be having crisis continuously because I see
The
things.
optimism is fantastic.
Yeah, becoming tougher. I mean, look, but we know, right? We know this is coming, so we can prepare. So funding, collaboration, cooperation is very important, and positive outlook. I mean, this is really important. You have to invest on education, human security, trust, and dignity. So,
for everyone involved.
yes. So,
Elena, thank you so much for joining us today. Your work on migration, on security, on human resilience provides some very useful perspectives for the project that we are working on for EVOSST, and for anyone who is working to build more inclusive and more responsive social service systems. And to our listeners, if you'd like to learn more about the EVOSST project, please visit evostproject.eu, where you can find the latest deliverables, newsletters, opportunities to engage with our research. The Euro-Atlantic Resilience Center is proud to be of this initiative alongside our 13 partner organizations. And as for our podcasts, we'll be back soon with more episodes of Resilience Talks. Please subscribe to our feed on your platform of choice so you don't miss any of the important conversation exploring resilience. Until then, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much. And I look forward to the results.